All right, stream's recording, so don't say any bad words. Skylar. Got Skylar and Matt here.
Yellow. I probably won't be here for long. Just wanted to come say hi.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. All I'm going to do is go through the kind of quick version of the desktop and motherboard information again and talk about some of the quiz questions that people are missing. And then we'll save the recording, upload it, and people will have a week to look at it and take the test. And
Sounds great.
Since you have a week and since you have Google, you guys should be able to get extremely high grades on this exam. And this is also the easiest of the three. The next one will include a bunch of propeller-headed stuff about how microprocessors work. And then the final is a combination of everything. So this one should be, you should make sure you aim for 100 on this one. Just because Rob's class allows you to drop your lowest exam. So if you nail 100 on this one, then you're in very good shape to screw up the later ones if you choose to, which some people do. Okay, recording is on. People are in the channel. Looks like the stream is up so you guys can see that. Okay, let's look at those lovely quiz results from last time. Let's see, this is section 1, results from desktop quiz. Looks like we're doing very well on most things. We've got 90% of you got this one. What statement is not good practice? Hold the expansion cards by the connectors. That's probably bad. Remove loose jewelry is probably good. Don't touch the microchip don't touch any part of a computer with a magnetized screwdriver. That'd be, don't touch the inside of it that is on. So sounds bad, seems good, seems good, seems good. That should be your thought process for this. Eliminate the obviously bad ones and move on. Let's see. Someone has a fly in their microphone. That's terrifying. Maybe it's me. Let's see. Okay. Doesn't want to scroll down. So, when is it okay to touch the inside of a computer that's turned on? Really never. Sometimes we do it. When disassembling, maybe. Using a multimeter to test, that sounds probably valid. You would use a multimeter while it's on to test the voltage. Make sure power is getting where it needs to go. While reassembling, no, it should probably be off in both these first and third instance. When a qualified electrician is present, having an electrician present does not make stupid things smart. It just means the electrician's probably saying, don't, right as you do it. So yeah. Again, process of elimination, a lot of the certification exam questions will be like this. You can eliminate some obviously bad answers if you just go, yeah, that seems bad. And whatever's left must be the right answer, I hope. Okay, devices that are considered black boxes. This is a book's term for things you don't actually crack open and try to fix. You should never open. We don't really open monitors much anymore. They're kind of hard to fix, and usually it's the screen that's broken, and that part just has to be replaced. So we don't open those very often. Power supply is another one. It holds a lot of charge, and if it's not completely properly discharged, then you could hurt yourself on that. Hard drive, we rarely take those apart. Data recovery specialists will sometimes take a spinner. We'll take parts out of it and hook it up to another thing and pull the data off. Video card, you don't really open either. So the answers the book are looking for are monitor and power supply. And I know that it's saying this because back in the day, and the book's a little out of date, it's like a couple years out of date, but back in the day, you could really hurt yourself, potentially stop your heart or upset your heart with a discharge from a CRT, one of those big old monitors, non-flat panel. Those aren't really around anymore, so this is much less of a danger. But the power supply and the monitor are two pieces that you're just probably never going to be messing with. Hard drives, also unlikely, but not dangerous. Video card, also unlikely, but not dangerous. You could, these days, take your heatsink and fans off a video card and upgrade it to a better one, or upgrade your video card to liquid cooling. So they're not black boxes. You can tinker with them. Let's see, 7. Come on now, Chrome. Okay, tips before you begin working in a computer case. Well, there's like 20 of these you could put in. I put Mr. T here because the one people forget sometimes is remove jewelry. So this reminds you to remove your jewelry. Mr. T wears a lot of jewelry. But here's the stuff the book, this is straight from the book, which means it's straight from the certification exam. So remove jewelry is good. Make notes, I accept. Stay organized, I accept. Don't stack delicate parts on top of each other is just good advice. All of these are good. Hold them by the edges, not by the connectors. Don't touch things with screwdriver. Yeah, same as the other question. Make sure everything's off. Don't touch the power supply. Don't get inside a monitor or power supply. See, same as the previous question. When you take the CERT exam, there'll be a lot of questions that are similar to each other, but they almost all have sort of tricky phrasing. Their idea of do you know what subject is, can we try to trick you into not knowing it, and you defeat us. Okay, first step you perform when opening the computer. I accept back up your data. I also accept some other stuff. Backup data, copy data to external storage is specifically what they're looking for. So that's the best answer. Some of you listed like multiple steps. I take that. Some of you, if you just say, just wipe the hard drive. If that's your first step, that is a bad move. Other than that, we accept a little bit of diversity there. This guy, we just did him. 90% on this guy. Pretty good. Micro ATX motherboard will fit into case that follows what minimum standard? This, I would have to Google this. It's 2.1, anything 2.1, because micro ATX didn't exist back in these earlier standards. This is a relatively new thing. But this is one of those things that if someone asked me this at work, what will a micro ATX case, what cases will micro ATX fit into? I would cheat and use PC part picker, or I would Google it because my brain would never retain this information. So let's see. This guy, a bunch of people got this wrong because, again, it's kind of tricky. Describe to me the difference between a tower and a desktop. Well, the most obvious one is the desktop is meant to be laid flat on the desktop, so the monitor sits on top of it. It is meant to be on the top of your desk, hence desktop. Now, a tower typically can sit on the side of the desk. It sits off to the side of the monitor. It can be on the floor. It can be tucked inside the desk. It does not sit on top. So that's a good answer. What are they looking for? Sits upright. Used for servers. That's a weird answer. Anticipate upgrading because there's more space. This is the most common one. This is a good answer. Desktop lies flat. So that's basically that. 12. Okay. What is the post? What can be done to troubleshoot this process? You should definitely be able to say, what is the post? It is the test. How do they phrase it? Series of tests performed at startup. If you just said this, you got half points on this question. As far as troubleshooting, installing USB cards, resetting or flashing the BIOS, rebooting the computer, there's a ton of steps that you would normally try. And if you take a good stab at any of them, I'd probably give you partial credit. Boots and error codes. Some of you said error codes. That's a great answer. If you're working on Dells, HPs, they emit certain beeps. They show little codes on the front of the box. Those help you diagnose post problems. So that's a fine answer. Okay, let's look at the motherboard quiz. Actually, let's look at the other section first on that test. Similar, 90, 90, 80, 80. The other section, not many people, but some missed this. Yeah. 2 most common form factors today. I have no idea. It's different every year. So if you Google it and the book is wrong, let me know. If you're right and the book is wrong, then you get points. So most common form factors today, book says ATX and MATX. It's probably right. Most things are going to be little micro builds or this. ATC, I don't know what that even is. I might have made these up. So this might be just sort of a silly check. Okay, let's go on to quiz 4. 75% of you got this right. When you build from parts, you start by deciding processor and motherboard. Now, I may have tricked you on this one, and I am sorry about that, because in some cases, we chose the case first, right? If we do PC part picker, sometimes we do choose the case first, which is a little different. But when you choose the case, you're still, it's because you already have kind of a processor and motherboard in mind, most likely. The essence of this question, what you need to get, is that the most important thing is processor and motherboard, because the processor and motherboard, they define each other. If you want processor A, then you have to get a motherboard that works with it. If you're determined to get motherboard A, then you have to get a processor that works with it. They're your first point of compatibility or incompatibility if you mess up. And when you choose a case first, you're already thinking, oh, I know I want a such and such motherboard, so let me choose a case that fits. Then I throw in you're really still choosing motherboard and processor first, even if you aren't quite tracking on that. So, question 2. Buses. I definitely feel like I could have explained this better. This is confusing. So, they contain only a single bus for I/O, video, and data. That's too definitive to say true. You got to say false to that, because there's a million different types of motherboards, and some of them do split up the video bus. Some of them do split up I/O and other things like that. This visual example kind of doesn't. Like PCI bus, so your I/O is probably on the PCI bus. Your video is definitely on the PCI bus, because I don't see it. Well, there's a separate AGP right here. So actually this example, if you analyze this example, I/O is not marked. Video is up here on the top. And data is over here on its own separate bus. So motherboards contain only a single bus. This one doesn't. This one contains several. It's got a front side. It's got a PCI bus. It's got an ATA bus. It's got a memory bus. So don't be fooled. Okay. Question 3. Come on, move over here, bud. Okay. Just momentarily losing scroll control. It's really cool, Chrome. What type of socket assumes that even force is applied to the processor when it's inserted? That's generally even force means zero insertion force. What were they looking for? Yeah. So FM2 is not really a thing. LGA, PGA, AM3. These are types of motherboards, but they may or may not include LGA. So if you Google processor socket even force, if you break up the question into its core components, if you're looking at it from a linguistic perspective, like the nouns in the sentence, you Google those, you're going to come up with ZIF. So this is just sort of a terminology thing. But again, it's definitely on the CERT exam. It's definitely something you should track on. This one's tricky. What is a possible remedy if your system hangs during boot? During boot, this means, what they mean is before the operating system. Like when you first turn it on, they mean during the post process. That's why the answer is flash the BIOS, because in their mind, boot is before the hard drive's really doing anything. So formatting the hard drive, if your computer crashes during boot, will not save you. If your computer boots up and then Windows crashes, that's how they would say that. If the operating system hangs, they're saying your system hangs during boot. Again, this is CompTIA cert phrasing. This is just probably ripped directly from the certification exam. So installing new CMOS RAM, I don't think you can even do that without soldering. Format the hard disk, it's not involved yet, so it's definitely not the remedy. Removing the TPM chip, all the TPM chip does is encrypt and decrypt. So it's probably not the reason for the crash. If you get an encryption error or a BitLocker error, as many of our customers got today because Dell randomly shut off a bunch of TPM chips, that was awesome. Then it would be the TPM chip, but it's definitely not hanging. It's actually popping up a BitLocker message saying, the TPM chip's not working. Well, cool. That's because Dell shut it off. So flash the BIOS is probably the best answer to this, and you just have to eliminate the rest because they're not factors, or shouldn't be. Let's see how the other class did on this. Pretty much missed the same ones. We had somebody miss the bus question. And then this one. What is a device driver? What is the role of motherboard drivers when you update a motherboard and install a new one? There's a lot of things you could say here. It's software that talks to different pieces of hardware, or it translates from machine language to whatever. Like, you could put a bunch of things. What are the answers they're looking for? Device drivers are small programs installed in Windows, for example. You could say Linux or Mac, I don't care. They communicate with devices. So they communicate, they translate, they connect. They're like little liaisons. There's a lot of different ways you can say that drivers talk to the hardware for the operating system. Phrase it however you want. I'll get it. And I'm pretty flexible on how you guys answered this. Okay. So let's run through the slides real quick. Any questions on any of those from the people here today? See, Daniel's joined us. Welcome. Okay, I've already put everyone to sleep with my detailed analysis. So let me just do a quick review of the crucial stuff, and let's go back to the beginning of the presentation. What do you say? Okay, so exam 1 is a combination of desktops, motherboards, and basic principles. It's a review of our first 3 chapters. So that includes roles of the technician. Are you diagnosing the problem? Are you repairing parts or replacing parts? Are you designing a system with someone's specific ideas in mind, or your own ideas? Are you building, putting the parts together, following someone else's design? Are you the installer, bringing in the computer, taking it out of the box, or setting it up for use? Are you the administrator? Are you trying to pull together all of these people and get a major job done through others? Investigative method is how we figure out what is wrong, how we reproduce the problem and identify it and get a bunch of suspects. So we reproduce it so we see it, because you cannot go by what someone else says. You know, it crashes when I click Word is not enough to go on. You then need to sit at the computer and try to find Microsoft Word. Make sure they have Word. Make sure it's not Word Perfect. Make sure they're not talking about WordPad. Make sure they're just not completely telling you the wrong thing and there's not 5 other problems that are unrelated. You really need to see it yourself. You're the expert, so your eyes need to see the problem. Identify possible causes. Is it software? Is it hardware? Is it the customer doing it? Is it the human factor? So start eliminating possibilities. Well, it can't be hardware. The hardware definitely passes this test. The software passes this test, or I uninstalled and reinstalled it. So eliminate. Start replacing parts. Reinstall Windows. Get a different hard drive. Switch the RAM around. Try different things. Then, once you're done and the problem goes away, try as many things as you can think of to reproduce the problem. Open up Microsoft Word, type of paper, print. Open up some of their files. Open up old files. Try to open up 12 files at once. See if it crashes. Once you're satisfied that the problem has gone away, you're out of there. Document everything you did for the next nerd. So, inside the case, everybody's favorite scene from 7. The book likes to call them FRUs, or I've heard one of the guys on a Plural site, this online teaching tool, call it FRUs. Never heard anybody say this in person or use the term FRU. Nobody I know would know what they're talking about. But the book's serious about it, and there are questions related to it on the CERT exam, so you need to know it. Case or chassis is the box. Okay. Power supply is where the power cord plugs in at the back. Motherboard is what all the devices plug into. It's the central point. Processor does all the thinking, computing, the hard part. Memory supports the processor, gives it room to breathe and think and function. Not enough memory and the processor is underutilized. Too much memory and you've just wasted some money. Expansion cards add capabilities. Add a better graphics card to run games. Add Ethernet ports. Add USB ports. Add Wi-Fi. Storage, storing people's data. So I still sometimes hear people, even at work sometimes, say memory and think of storage. Storage is not memory. RAM is memory. Okay. Smart practices. Make notes. Obviously, there's test questions about all of this. Remove loose jewelry. These are good answers to the, what do you do before you take apart a computer? Stay organized. Don't stack delicate things on each other. You could break them. Don't touch the board clips. Your greasy little fingers could get, Papa John's garlic knot sauce all over your graphics card, and you'd be very sad. Magnetized tools, never ever seen it happen, but I was warned from an early age in my tech support career not to do this, so I just don't do it. So I've never lost anything to this, but also it's because I just don't risk it. I avoid it. Beware sharp edges. I have cut my fingers 1,000 times. Part of the reason we are not sharing equipment during the COVID crisis is because you're not supposed to swap germs. And every time I've ever taught hardware, at least someone during the course of a semester cuts their finger open and we have a bleeder in the lab. So that's bad for germ spreading. Sometimes it's me because I'm super clumsy. Static electricity, bad. ESD strips, good, just eliminates it. I never use them, but if I was in a super staticky environment and I had no way to discharge and there was ESD strips there, I put one on. Grounding against the case is good. Fabric sheets can also help, strangely. Okay, opening computer case. Obviously, from our quiz questions, we know that when the book asks, what's step one? It's back up the data. That's because whoever wrote the book probably did actual computer support and had customer data get lost or destroyed and had the customer very sad or very angry or both. And you just don't want to go through the 7 stages of grief with people over their files. You want to back it up first. And so when very bad things happen, you go, oh, no problem, I have a backup. And they think you are amazing. They love you forever. So turn it off, unplug it, be smart. Don't shock yourself. Unplug everything else just to make sure nothing's interfering. Drain the power supply. I don't usually think about this, but when you're taking things apart, you tend to unplug it and then you're messing with other things and it discharges on its own over time. Screw organizer, very good. Oh, I remember what this stands for. It stands for name of your sex tape. Okay. I'm an idiot. Open the case cover. See, finally on step 4, we're actually physically opening the case. There's a lot of preparation here and you shouldn't skip it. Older cases, sometimes you got to remove more parts. Those little micro PCs that some of you have for your garbage computers in lab require that. You got to pull the side panel off, then you got to take the front panel off, and then things to actually open up. Multimeter, don't use these often. Usually when a power supply dies, we just chuck it, and they don't die that often. So this allows you to test, see if it's working though. If you ever had a pile of power supplies and you're like, which of these are good? You would plug them in, turn them on and connect a multimeter to it and see if you get any readings. Okay, this is a desktop. This is a mini tower. This one looks a little bigger, so we're going to call it a mid tower. You see it's got 4 expansion bays. This one doesn't have that many. Then we're going to go up to the big guy, which is a full tower. Even more expansion. You don't see these much anymore because most people don't need one. Okay, disassembly. Do we need tools or not? This one looks like a flathead screwdriver might be nice, but you might be able to turn these with your thumbs. Which side do we open? Should we remove the expansion cards? Graphics cards are huge and they're in the way and they're connected to power. In this case, this one's connected to cooling. So you're probably going to remove it first because it's in your way. This is an example of a generic use PC, Microsoft Word, accounting, basic scheduling, whatever, office work, normal computer, totally fine. This is a gaming computer. It's a little fancier, more cooling, more graphics power, bigger power supply. You should be able to look at this and both due to the colors and due to the hardware that's in here, 1, 2, 3 graphics cards, you should look at this and think gaming computer or workstation, graphics workstation, also possible. Motherboards you should be able to recognize on site. Like this is a standard motherboard. This is like a very standard LGA 115. You can see it's written right here. It's got 2. You should be able to recognize the RAM slots immediately. 1, 2. If I say, what's this? You should be able to say, that's a graphics card slot, or that's an expansion slot, or that's a PCI slot. And what are these other little ones? They're just smaller versions of the same thing. This one is where you put the graphics card. This one you might do Wi-Fi, Ethernet, USB, sound cards, little stuff. If I said, what's this little silver circle? You should know that's the CMOS. If I said, where is it on the gaming board? Right here. Why is this a gaming board? Because it looks fancy. It's got an M.2 slot under here somewhere. Can't actually see it. It's probably under this heat shield, I guess. So lots of expansion.
Heat shield does say M2.
What's that?
On the heat shield does say M2 on it.
Yeah, that's why I said it says M.2, but I don't see the slot's actually right here. Now that I look, here it is. So if your graphics card is a gigantic graphics card, it would cover all of this area, but the M.2 is underneath it, and these little screw holes are where you would bolt it in. But sometimes they're under a heat shield. I have seen them where the M.2 slot has its own heat shield. They're just basically bragging. That's the only reason they put that there. The M.2 would go way up here. Right by the processor, though, for quick access. Okay. But yeah, good eye. You should always read. Motherboards sometimes actually say useful things on them. Like this one, it's like, hey, I'm a Tomahawk Arctic, and this is DDR4, so don't try to put DDR3 or 5 in here. And I'm an MSI, so if suddenly you were like, ugh, I got to get the drivers for this, you'd be like, well, it's an MSI Tomahawk Arctic. I Google that, I download the drivers. We'll do a lab on this pretty soon. Next time we get back in the class, we might do this one. It's either next or 2 times from now. Configure a BIOS. We'll tinker with the BIOS and reset it to defaults. Hopefully we won't break the computers in the lab. We'll configure UEFI booting. We're going to experiment with that later. And we probably won't flash the BIOS in there. But replacing CMOS batteries, not too hard. You just pry it, it pops right out, put in a new one. Install, replace a motherboard. We have a lab about that. And considerations. I would like you guys to be able to look at a motherboard and instantly know what it's for. Like this one, you look at it and go, well, it says workstation, giant clue. But also, I see it's kind of cool looking, but not super flashy. So that tells me also workstation. It's not like a regular computer, but it's also not a gaming PC. And then when I see a Quadro, I know the Quadros are not for gaming. They're for Photoshop, they're for video editing, they're for serious business graphics. So those are your clues to identifying motherboards. And you should be able to identify gaming motherboards pretty easily. They're fancy, they look cool. Let's see if this one has an M.2. Very, very tiny. Yeah. I think this is the one I was thinking of. See this? I'm pretty sure the M.2 goes under that heat shield. I think. You guys remember what this motherboard's for, right?
Servers.
Yes, sir. You can tell because of all the different things you can add to it, right? 2 processor spots, 8 RAM sockets, 7 expansion slots, 3 Ethernet ports. This thing is awesome. This would make an incredible computer. Way overpowered for most of the things you would do. And then a standard one. And on the standard one, again, just visually, quickly able to tell me what is what. Where does the processor go? Well, right here. Where's the RAM go? The memory, right there. Expansion there. Hard drives plug in over here. These are the SATA ports. More on those later. Processor sockets, you should understand that ZIF means you just kind of drop it in. You don't have to apply force. AMD used to do PGA. I really need to update that slide. PGA just sort of sets down into there, and LGA, let's see. This is a PGA, sets down in with the pins. They have to line up with the holes. If you bend them like this, it's ruined forever. LGA, it gets mashed flat. No pins have to be inserted into holes. It's a little less delicate because of that. You fear breakage less because it looks like this. There's nothing for you to bend or break. You'd really have to be deeply irresponsible with an LGA processor to break it. Chipset is a bunch of chips on the motherboard that support this and that. They're on different buses, different peripherals. With Dells in particular, it's important to do the chipset drivers. They have their own drivers for pretty much every motherboard, and you can just get away with not using them, and Windows 10 will figure it out. But on most computers, it's very smart to install the chipset drivers, especially if it has special performance factors. Dells typically act real weird if they don't have their chipset drivers installed. This, when you look at this map, it's a lot to take in, and it's a little confusing, a little scary. I look at it and I'm like, I don't understand what half of this says. But when you look at it, this is what I want. I want you to look at this and go, oh, that's an architecture map. That's a motherboard drawn in Microsoft Visio or Flowchart or Draw.io, whatever. This is just an engineer's way of saying, boss, this is the new motherboard we're building. Check it out. It's got a processor up here. It's got a chipset, and then this is connected to this. This is just sort of a roadmap to the motherboard that we're going to build. Or when you're going to the public and the public says, hey, how's the new motherboard work? You haul this map and go, well, let me tell you. We've got this, and we've got this, and we move this over here for more speed. And the DDR3 is connected right to the processor, has its own bus separate from everything else, so the RAM's real quick. And people go, oh, okay, cool. Like it's a tool to explain what you've built. So is this. This is reusing, you saw that in that question we discussed a bit ago. A bus is a system of pathways. Sure. Carries power and data. Yes. It's a bunch of, if you could peek inside what the bus is saying, it would just be gibberish to you. Machine language, just zeros and ones. And then the faster the bus is really decided by how many. Think of it like a street. The more lanes, the more traffic you can move through it, back and forth. 8 lanes is faster than 2 lanes, even if they're both going 55 miles an hour. Post. Power on self-test. It's actually less important that you remember what post stands for than it is for you to just remember that it's what the computer does when you turn it on. If it posts, then you know the motherboard's good, the screen is good, the connection between the motherboard and the screen is good, the power supply is good, the motherboard's getting power. Probably the power button you press to turn it on is working great. So it's a really good indicator of where your hardware is. If a computer will post but not boot all the way to the desktop, then you have a software problem most likely. You need a new operating system installed. CMOS is battery, stores some config data, and keeps everything synced to each other. Old BIOSes are ugly and dumb, and you can't use a mouse. We call them legacy. They weren't called legacy back in the day. They were called BIOS. But then we came up with the new UEFI BIOS. And so at work, when you're dealing with a machine that is on the borderline and you're not sure which one it is, we literally have this discussion. This is a Dell Optiplex 990. Does it boot legacy or does it boot UEFI? The answer in that case is yes. It can boot legacy, but if you update the BIOS, if you download Dell's BIOS Flash utility and update it to the latest version, it can boot UEFI. And UEFI has some other security features and network boot features that legacy does not. So we've actually mandated that any computer that can't UEFI boot is not coming on the SIU network. Okay, processors, CPU, central processing unit. You should understand that there are low power processors that are great for laptops or tablets. They're slower. They crunch numbers slower. They do less math per second. They cannot play games as well as a big expensive processor, but they use less electricity. They generate less heat. That makes them better for small devices. So there's a point to all of these processors that you need to pick the right tool for the right job, and it will be priced appropriately. Coolers, air cooling is good. Water cooling is better initially, but over long periods, they kind of even out. Memory, RAM, random access memory, okay? Not storage. You don't save your files on this. This allows the processor to think about more than one thing at a time. This expands your processor's ability to do more than one thing. So you got 4 sticks of RAM. Say Windows eats up one of them. Microsoft Word eats another one. Your Chrome tabs eat the third one. And then with the fourth one, you're able to play a video game. That's why you want more memory, so you can have more things loaded on the computer, open, active at once. If you have 4 gigs of RAM, your computer can really just boot up the OS, and then after that, it's going to be desperate. It's going to basically run out of free memory and start shuffling it around all the time, which slows it down. And it's going to use the hard drive, the storage, as fake memory. And you don't want that because that slows everything down. Memory types, these are full-size DIMMs. These are SO DIMMs for a laptop. They're smaller, more compact. They can hold just as much stuff. This is an 8 gig. This is a, I don't see what this one is. It's not really labeled, but these both could be 8s. This could be 8. It's just a different shape. Usually it's a little more expensive because it is more compact and rarer. Small outline is what it stands for, but I don't think I quiz you on that at any point, and you could always Google it. Expansion slots. You can see that over years we've switched a few times. Most equipment you might see that is less than 7 or 8 years old is just going to have PCI Express. We've been on this spot, this shape slot for expansion cards for a long time. We're stuck on it. So the rest of these, I could probably take these out. It's a really hideous slide. Expansion cards could include Ethernet cards, also called network interface cards, which we shorten to NICs. People in desktop support usually say NIC. They might say Ethernet card. Customers will say Ethernet port or internet port or thing like that. People in network engineering will certainly say NIC or adapter or some propeller-headed thing. Okay? This is a gorgeous slide. This is the exact opposite of the previous slide. Stunning. Another expansion card is, what if you don't have enough USB ports? You don't see these too often anymore, but there's honestly many times where I wish I had one, because I'll be on a computer and the person's like, well, I have a scanner, I have a printer, I have a mouse, a keyboard, I have this, I have that, 12 different USB things, got a webcam, and you run out of USB ports. So throwing in an expansion that added a couple more, especially these are USB 3, they're pretty quick, would be nice. But we just never have these laying around because it's not that commonly needed. Wi-Fi card, if you have a desktop and you want to put it in a weird room and not run cables to that room, this is the solution. Put this in the back of the desktop, make sure the antennas can reach random different directions, and it's not all behind a refrigerator or some other giant metal object, and you should be good. Wi-Fi. This is capture card. You take the video. Usually this is placed... The easiest example I can think of is if you were an internet streamer and you wanted to stream to your friend, you playing your Nintendo Switch, you would hook the out from you would hook up your Nintendo Switch to the in of this, and then the out from this to your TV. So then you're still watching the Switch on your big old TV and having a good time playing Mario Kart. And this, the video from the Switch is passing through this card, and your computer's then uploading this to YouTube or Twitch or some other live streaming thing. That's what it's for. It's a capture card. Yeah. We don't probably need these guys this time, but I love that shot of Babbage doing that. I think he really regretted that. Yep, that was too much. Capture card. This is a gigantic graphics card. Looks like a founder's edition of a 1080 Ti. This was their flagship. Then the 2080 Ti, and very soon in class we're going to talk about the 3070, 3080, and 3090, which were just announced and seem like total BS. If NVIDIA can actually deliver on their performance of the second replacement for this product, then they will absolutely crush the entire video card market to a pulp. And 6 months from now, NVIDIA cards will be in basically everything, unless they're full of crap. Unless they can't actually deliver on what they promised the other week. And unless if AMD has some amazing thing up their sleeve, then maybe the arms race will just continue. This is a power supply. It's partially modular. You can tell because this cable is not removable. That's not modular. But all of these are modular, meaning you only plug in the ones you need, so there's no extra cables in your computer, because this one is always needed. So that's cool. Drivers, remember, are programs that control the device. It's the simplest way to say it. They happen after the OS boot. They normally don't happen early on in a system. If you're in the BIOS and you can use the mouse, that means a mouse driver is loaded, but it's a very generic USB mouse driver, and it probably acts really janky if you have a fancy mouse. Okay, cable management is important. This is very bad. This on the right is very good. As you can see why. If you're the person that built this, the next person who comes in, instead of solving whatever problem has happened, their first problem is to figure out what you did. What's plugged into where? What is this? What is that? What are those? I have no idea. If you built this, and then there's a problem with one of these devices, the person comes in and goes, okay, I already know what these are, what those are. Orange means this, green means this, whatever. Like maybe green means it goes to people's desktops. This goes to accounting. This goes to design. This goes to production. And then purple means it goes to servers or goes to the internet pipe. Like it's all color coded, so you instantly get a sense of what's what. On a smaller scale, if you build a PC for someone else and you leave it this messy, then you're inviting trouble. First of all, airflow is not good because the side panel's off. Or maybe it's needed for airflow because the actual internal airflow is terrible. So this is bad. This is better. It's cleaner. There's nothing in the way. I can get to any part without having to move cables. I like that. For ports, you guys will need to be able to visually recognize ports. You should be able to look at this display and say, oh, that's that old video, analog video, VGA, whatever you call it. This was the next type of video that was around a lot, but never really completely replaced this one. Both of these coexisted for a long time. This is analog, meaning it's just like an actual video signal. And then this one is digital, DVI. It's ones and zeros. And then we kind of replaced those with DP, which is very good quality video, and HDMI, which includes audio also. You should recognize that these are USB ports. You don't have to necessarily recognize this one. It's eSATA. And then USB, Ethernet. A tough question a lot of people missed in the early test was these two ports. They're compatible. They're the same thing, but unfortunately what companies are allowed to do is rename stuff. So one company is calling this a mini DisplayPort, and then Apple, in this case, is calling it a Thunderbolt. It's the same port. They kind of get together and they all agree on how fast does the port go? How big is it? What shape is it? What language does it speak? What are the basic protocols of the port so that they're all compatible, so that Western Digital can sell a hard drive that works in Apple's, Dell's, HP's, right? They all have to kind of agree on common stuff. But then when it comes to the product, they can name it whatever they want, which is confusing. Okay, USB. We know this is the end that usually goes to a printer or an old hard drive. This is the one that goes to, usually these days, monitors that have USB ports built in. You don't see this on many things other than monitors. Then old USB ports are usually black like this. USB 3 ports usually have like a blue tongue or a blue inner case lining. And then USB-C, you can't plug it in wrong. It's better. It's faster. It's cool. A lot of new phones are using this. It's important to remember the concept of evolution in that in computer technology, we invent a thing, we improve it, we keep improving it. Spinners were good. They allowed us to store an amazing amount of stuff for relatively cheap, and everybody bought really big hard drives. File size expanded. This allowed people to do better art, better music, edit more video. It just allowed us to do more. And then this got too slow, too unreliable. This is how we mostly lost data, was moving parts. This used a lot of energy. We came up with a better way that is faster, more responsive, instantly accelerates to its maximum copy speed, sort of like a Tesla instantly accelerates to its maximum torque. And then we improved on that. We thought, nah, let's take it out of the SATA case, just put it on a little board that's right next to the processor. Minimum lag, cut out all the middlemen, and just give the processor a massive amount of storage. That's an M.2 NVMe card. Just remember M.2. Okay, spinners. Great. Okay, that is your lightning review. Thanks to Matthew and Daniel for hanging out. Sorry, do you guys have any questions or anything you'd like to focus on?
Nope, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming to hang out with me. I know this was just sort of a lightning round of me rapid fire talking for an hour.
That's all right. I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thank you guys. Okay, well, if anybody has any questions about the exam, email me. I'll be around. You have a whole week. You only get one try. These are Rob's rules, not mine, but I agree with them. And if you have not taken all the quizzes, the methods quiz, the desktops quiz, and the motherboard quiz, take those first. Practice. Figure out what you know and what you don't know. Make sure you take those first. Okay?
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. I hope to see you in class next week.
Yep.
Thanks.
Oh my God. Whatever that
That's
is,
my
I hope.
dog.
I hope. Okay. Hope you're okay.